Okay, so we are officially done with all that boring crap, that biochemistry stuff. So we're going to start talking about the first system that we're going to do in the class, and that will be the skin itself. Okay, so we got a bunch of objectives here. As you can see, we're going to explain what the role of the skin is as a functioning organ of the human body, what it does, and how it's accomplished. Examples of how the integumentary system responds to maintain homeostasis in the body. Spoiler alert, it's pretty much temperature, so that's it. The two layers of the skin, the dermis and the epidermis. Why our skin is the color it is, and melanin, or maybe some external things. Okay. We're not going to do the model, the drawings, the epidermis. I'm going to give that to you in lab, so we'll go through that actually on our next lab session. Okay, we're going to talk about the accessory structures of the skin, so basically the sweat glands, your glands in general, nails, hair, and these things called the erector pili muscles. Why skin is stratified, and the differences between the layers of the skin, specifically the bottom layer of the epidermis and the top layer of the epidermis. And then we're going to talk about keratinocytes and melanocytes. Spoiler alert, keratinocytes are just skin cells. All right, that's it. They exist to be skin cells and turn into keratin. Melanocytes are there to pigment the skin. And then we're going to talk about burns. All right, so let's start. Let's start and see what we got. All right, so the skin. The skin is an organ. Okay, so that's the first thing. That's the first take-home message we got. The skin equals an organ. Okay. Now, what an organ is a bunch of tissues that get together and they do a certain job. Okay, so that's what it is. Okay, our skin happens to be the largest of the human organism. And it's approximately 10 to 20% of your body weight. 10 to 20% body weight. So it's pretty heavy. It's pretty heavy itself. Okay. The skin, with all of the accessory structures, nails, hair, your glands, it makes up the thing called the integumentary system. Okay. Right. Skin itself, we're just going to talk about the structure. Okay. It is two layers. Okay. So if we look at it, so here's a block of skin. Here's a block of skin. Okay. You have an upper layer. Okay. And this is called the epidermis. Okay. And then you have a layer below that. That is called the dermis. Okay. And below this, if you look at some textbooks, you got this fat layer. Okay. And they will call this the hypodermis. Dermis, and it's adipose. And adipose is just your fat cells. And a lot of people, what they do is they call the hypodermis the superficial fascia. Okay, and a fascia is just a layer of connective tissue that surrounds the body. Okay, all right. So that's our basic structure. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to talk about the epidermis first. Okay, and then we're going to talk about the dermis, and then we're going to talk about the accessory structures, and then we'll talk about burns. So we shouldn't have that much to do with skin. So let's begin. Epidermis. Okay, it is the outer layer of skin. Okay, that's it. It is a tissue type called stratified, squamous epithelium. Okay, specifically, it is keratinized. It is keratinized, stratified squamous epithelium. And basically keratin is just this protein, it's dead cells. It's a protein and the cells are dead. Okay. Now, you maybe look at the stratified squamous epithelium, you're like, what the world does this mean? Stratified just means there are several layers. Squamous is just a cell type. It's a shape of a cell. So squamous cells are actually these little flat cells. And since it's stratified, there are several layers of them. So if it's 2 or more layers, it's called stratified. And so this is basically what your skin looks like. Okay, so a bunch of cells stacked on each other. And then you got this layer of keratin, which is basically cells, dead cells on top of it. Okay, all right, so that's what we've got for the general structure. Now the epidermis has several different types of layers, okay? And going from outwards, most superficial, to in, so the layers, we're going to go superficial to deep, which just means from the surface down. We have the first layer is called the stratum corneum. Okay. Below that, we have what's called the stratum lucidum. Okay. Now this is only found in thick skin. Okay. And thick skin is only found in the palms and the soles. Okay. So the palms of your hand and the soles of your feet. That's where your thick skin is. Okay. And then below this, we have this thing called the stratum granulosum. Okay. Below that, we have the stratum spinosum. Okay. And then finally, stratum basale. Okay. Now this is where our stem cells are. Okay. And stem cells are the cell that give rise to other cells. So if you injure your skin and you damage some of those cells on the upper layers, you have to replace them from the stratum basale. So if we look at all these together, so let's just draw a little picture. So we've got a layer of cells here. So one layer of cells here, and they're kind of cube shaped. This is basale. Okay, and then above this, you have spinosum. Okay, above this, you have granulosa. And then here you have corneum. Okay. Now you know right here that this is thick skin. This is thin skin because I do not have a lucidum. Okay. So down here, stem cells. Okay. Sit down here. So if I need to grow new cells, so if I need to grow new skin, I have to grow them from the basale, and the skin grows upwards. And this eventually what's going to happen is you're going to shed your skin. About every 28 days you shed your skin. Okay, so that's what we got. Those are the layers of the skin. So corneum, lucidum, granulosum, spinosum, and basale. Basale themselves. Anything else I need to tell you? No, I do not. Also inside the stratum basale, we have these cells called melanocytes. Melanocytes, okay? These are pigment cells. These are pigment cells. And they are in the stratum basale, okay? And they produce melanin. They produce melanin. Melanin. And that's just the pigment. That is just the pigment. So if you look at, so if let's say here's our basale cell. So let's say our basale. Okay. So in the basala, you may have this one cell right here, and it sends these little finger-like projections outward, melanocytes. Okay, and that's what they do, and they're just going to release melanin. And melanin, like I said earlier, it's just a pigment. It's just a pigment. And what causes melanin to be released is UV, ultraviolet radiation. So if you go into the sun, you're going to be bombarded with ultraviolet, non-ionizing ultraviolet radiation. What that's going to do is it's going to cause these melanocytes to produce melanin. And what melanin does is it actually absorbs ultraviolet radiation, so you do not burn. You do not burn. So melanocytes are evolutionary protection for sunlight, for UV radiation itself. Okay, so that's all the melanocytes do. Okay, so which brings us to the subject of skin color. So we've already talked about skin, melanocytes. Other things that will affect skin color, okay, besides melanocytes, are heredity. Okay. So one thing that you should understand about melanocytes is everybody has the same number of melanocytes. Okay. So me, I'm a white dude. I'm a white dude. Okay. You all see me in class. I'm a pretty white guy. Okay. If you were to compare the number of melanocytes from my skin to that of a black person, it doesn't matter where they are. It could come from the Caribbean. They could come from sub-Saharan Africa. You know, anywhere. And you look at the number of melanocytes in our skin, they would be exactly the same. Okay, everybody has the same number of melanocytes. Okay, the difference between my skin, and this is the only difference. The difference is that I don't produce as much melanin as somebody with darker skin. That's it. That's the only difference there. Okay, so those people who have darker skin, you know, like Middle Eastern, people of Mediterranean descent, Caribbean descent, African descent, they have that darker skin because genetically their melanocytes just produce different amounts of melanin. That is it. Okay, now if you look in different ethnic backgrounds, and you see like among the black population, you see different hues in the black population. What that is that's just a different color of melanin. The melanin actually ranges in color from yellow to very dark brown. So if you see people who have a yellowish coloring, that's because their melanin is more of a yellowish coloring. Or if you see people with a very dark, almost black skin, that's because their melanin is very, 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 very dark. Okay, and there's variations in between. That's why we have this lovely spectrum of color because of the melanin. The melanin is not uniform. It is not uniform in any person. But the thing it is uniform in everybody is melanocytes. Okay. Another thing that's quite interesting is that people who are albinos, people who do not make pigment at all, they still have melanocytes. They just produce no melanin. So take home thing, we all have melanocytes. The only thing that's difference between us and the skin colors is the amount of melanin it produces and the hue of that. Okay. Right. So other things. So that's the heredity. Okay. You don't control the melanocytes. That comes from your parents, melanocytes. Then we have our environment. So the environment. Okay. Now here, the big one is sunlight. Okay. If you were out in the sun, you're going to have darker skin because melanocytes are going to release more melanin. That's it. Okay. So, and the culprit of this is non-ionizing UV, ultraviolet radiation. Okay. Which means the next one here is UV radiation. Okay. Think tanning beds. Tanning beds will do this. Okay. Or sun lamps. Okay. And then X-rays. X-rays will also cause the melanocytes to produce melanin. Okay. Now, physiologic things. Physiologic conditions that will cause a changing of the skin color is oxygenation, O2 saturation of the blood, O2 sat of the blood. Okay, if you have a higher oxygen saturation, if it's high, increase O2, it's going to give you a pinkish color. Okay, it's going to give you a pinkish color. If you have decrease O2 floating around blood, it's going to give you more of a bluish color. Also called cyanosis. Cyanosis. Now, if you're taking Menterm, actually all of you guys are taking Menterm, osis is the abnormal condition, cyan is blue. So this is the abnormal condition of blue, of being blue. Okay. Okay, so that's O2 saturation. Another thing is how tight your blood vessels constrict. So if you have vasoconstriction, so that your blood vessels clench down, it's called vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction, what that's going to do is it's actually going to simulate not having enough blood. So this is going to cause you to turn bluish. Vasodilation, it's going to stimulate having too much oxygen in the blood. That's going to make you appear pinkish. Okay. So those of you who are illegally allowed to drink, so if you've ever seen anybody drink alcohol and then their cheeks get red, so if you ever see you guys chinks, like a blushing of the cheeks, that's because the alcohol is causing a dilation of those vessels in the face, and it's causing more blood to actually get near the surface of the skin, so they have a reddish appearance. Okay. One of the ones I saw was actually cool. One of the coolest things I ever saw was beta carotene. Beta carotene, T-E-N-E. Beta carotene from carrots. Okay, so I actually saw a patient one time, and she was orange. She was actually orange, and I was like, wow, that's kind of. And it was basically over the malar region of her face, over her cheeks, and over the bridge of her nose, a little bit on her chin. And I was like, what do you do? And she's like, I eat 2 bags of carrots a day. And I was like, why do you do this? And she's like, I just like carrots. And she just had this craving for carrots. So what had happened though is she was eating so many carrots so often is that the beta carotene of the carrot was actually being deposited in her skin, so it was giving her an orangish appearance. Okay, and it's not like bright orange, but it was kind of like pumpkin. It was like a pumpkin hued, across her face and her cheeks. Okay, and then the big one, the big one that you are going to see probably quite often when you guys are out doing your hospital stuff, if you do hospital stuff, is jaundice. Jaundice. Okay, and what jaundice gives, it gives a yellowish pigmentation to the skin. Okay, that's all you need to know about. Whoa, I spelled skin totally wrong. Yellowish pigmentation to the skin. Okay, so that's what we got from jaundice. Okay, and with that, I think we're done with the epidermis. So basically, what you need to know about the epidermis is that it's got several layers. Remember the layers. Stratified squamous epithelium. Stratified squamous epithelium. It keratinizes. That means the upper layer of the skin is dead. And the reason that it does that is to protect the skin. It makes the skin a little bit more tough. And that's pretty much all you got to know about the dermis. Okay, we'll go over this stuff in lab that you need to know about structure-wise. But that's it for the dermis.